Hey guys, what's up? Today I want to show you 10 great JRPGs released on the wrong console. If these games had been released on the right console, in my opinion, they could have done much better. Now, a lot of JRPGs were released on the wrong console too, right? But these have been ported, re-released, remade or remastered on the right console. The 10 you're about to see today, nope, they still remain exclusive, sadly, on the wrong console. So let's begin! Number 10. Infinite on Discovery. After seeing that the original Xbox didn't do very well in Japan compared to other consoles, Microsoft wanted to push the 360 as much as possible over there, so they opened the doors for many Japanese developers to develop games on their new console. Square Enix, of course, was one of them. They decided to support a 360 by releasing a few games over it. They were intelligent enough to release some of them on the PS3, but others stayed on the 360 to retain exclusivity. Infinite on Discovery was one of them, and it was released on September 2008 worldwide, developed by Tri-Ace. While it did sell very well at the beginning, the game met a cold reception from PlayStation, Square Enix, and Tri-Ace fans. Previously, most of their RPGs had been released on PlayStation consoles, so to publish one exclusively on the 360 most RP gamers just weren't going to buy didn't make a lot of sense. Of course, it was indeed released there to give RP gamers reasons to buy the system. However, to date, the system didn't really succeed in the genre, and therefore Infinite on Discovery was forgotten. And to be honest, this game just doesn't feel right on the 360 for some reason. I always thought its ideas would have worked best on the PlayStation 3. Number 9. Suikoden Tear Cries. The Nintendo DS was the right console for many JRPGs out there. Nevertheless, it wasn't truly a good home for Suikoden Tear Cries. It's a spin-off of the Suikoden series and the last one ever to be localized. It sold fairly well in all regions, especially in Japan, but most fans didn't even notice it ever existed. Why? Because every single Suikoden game, even the spin-offs, had been released on PlayStation consoles. There's a reason why Konami went for the DS this time though. Suikoden 4 and 5 didn't do very well in sales, so the company thought Nintendo would be a better home to continue the series. Well, it seems they were wrong. Tear Cries is a fantastic game, perhaps not as good as the main titles, but great nonetheless. Too bad it became more of a hidden gem than anything, cause Suikoden fans weren't looking in the Nintendo DS direction. Number 8. Onimusha Tactics. Yes, the GBA was also an amazing system to develop and release RPGs for, but the Onimusha series, just like Suikoden, was always released on PlayStation consoles. Why develop a spin-off, a strategy RPG Tactics Ogre clone, on a Nintendo portable system? Yeah, I'm aware many companies started doing this with some video game series of all kinds of genres, releasing sequels or spin-offs on the enemy system. Well, Onimusha Tactics was one of many, and it remained exclusive to the GBA until its digital re-release on the Wii U Virtual Console. No one cared anyway, cause why would Onimusha fans go out of their way to get a GBA and buy a spin-off with a totally different gameplay? I don't know, maybe Capcom thought a Nintendo handheld system would be a better home for the little spin-off? Sadly, it didn't sell well at all. The game's a hidden gem, and yes, it's still great. Number 7. Ogre Battle 64, Person of Lordly Caliber. The Nintendo 64 was one of the biggest failures of all time when it comes to RPGs. We all know the PlayStation 1 is to blame for this. No one wanted to develop RPGs on the 64 because the PS1 was a sensation back then, and a much better home. Knowing this, Quest Corporation, bought by Square Enix in 2002, still developed their next Ogre Battle game for a Nintendo console. It makes sense because their first two Ogre games had been released on the Super Nintendo, so it was only natural to continue on with the series with the company. But then Atlus appeared and brought their games to the PlayStation. Why the hell didn't they do the same with this one? At least it was re-released digitally on the virtual consoles of Wii and Wii U. Nice, I'm happy with that. Thanks Atlus, thanks Nintendo. But the game was still released on the wrong system because you knew perfectly no one wanted to develop RPGs for the Nintendo 64. Number 6. Skies of Arcadia. This one was released on the wrong console twice. That's right, it was developed by Overworks, a division of Sega, so it makes sense for the game to be released on a Sega console. What doesn't make that much sense to me is releasing an RPG late in the year 2000 when the Dreamcast was on its secured path to failure. To make matters worse, Nintendo opened its doors to Sega so they could continue developing and releasing games at least, but it did so on the GameCube, another console that was weak in terms of JRPGs. Well, at least there's two consoles where you can play this game nowadays. Too bad their physical copies are quite pricey nowadays and there's no digital version or any other re-release whatsoever to date. In the end, it made sense to release it on the Dreamcast and the GameCube back then, but now I'm pretty sure Sega doesn't feel the same way. Why? Because believe it or not, it was also planned to be ported to the PS2! However, it kept getting delayed over and over until it was finally cancelled and released on the GameCube instead. Ah, the irony. Murphy's Law. Number 5. Tales of Fantasia. The original Tales of Fantasia was released twice on the right consoles, the Super Nintendo and the PlayStation, but both versions were released so fans of the Tales series from the rest of the world wanted to have their own version of the very first Tales game ever made. Namco thought it would be a good idea to port the absolute worst version of it to the West, the Game Boy Advance release. It plays alright, sure, but the battles suffer from some serious lag, frame drop and slow animations, so imagine the collision detection which renders the game totally unenjoyable in my opinion. Ironically though, it was well received at first and met with positive reviews. Huh. Well, sure I guess it's playable, but after playing the fan-translated original versions, it's so hard to play this one again. In conclusion, Fantasia shouldn't be in this video because it was released on the right systems, but the good version stayed in Japan, and we only got the version released on the wrong system. Had this been ported to another console like the PSP or the DS for example, it would have met a much better home in my opinion. Number 4. Xenoblade Chronicles X. There's no reason to over-explain this one, so I'll be quick. Xenoblade Chronicles was released on the Wii to a commercial fiasco thanks to the GameStop controversy. Thankfully, it was ported to the new 3DS. Another not so right home for it, but at least there were now two versions of it to play. Finally, the Switch remake, which saved it from being on this list. X, however, wasn't so lucky, and it's still exclusive to a system most RP gamers will never buy. True, it felt right to release it on the Wii U, as Xenoblade kinda promised to remain exclusive to Nintendo consoles, but the system was a failure. Many games had been ported to the Switch already. Not this one, because Monolith Soft, the developers, think it's gonna be very difficult. Well, whatever the future of this game, there's no doubt now, it was definitely released on the wrong console. Number 3. The Last Story. Some RPGs released on the GameCube and the Wii found these systems to be a good home for them. The Last Story, however, feels like it didn't. Still exclusive to the Wii with controls and graphics that could have been much better on the PS3. Sakaguchi's company, after leaving Square Enix, Miss Walker, focused on releasing their games on anything except PlayStation. Not sure why though, but I'm pretty sure there's an explanation. The last story was going to be a Japan exclusive until Operation Rainfall supported Exceed to localize it worldwide. The Wii was inferior in terms of graphics to other systems, and the ambitious nature of this game included gameplay controls that didn't favor the Wii mode a lot. It just doesn't feel like a game suited for the Wii like other RPGs. It sold well, sure, but after a while people just stopped buying it because of its late release in 2012. But because it was developed specifically for the Wii, it couldn't be easily ported to another system, which in my opinion would have been more than ideal. Number 2. The Baten Kaitos games. These pair, like some other JRPGs released on the GameCube, were specifically developed for it. In fact, it was precisely due to the lack of interest in developing RPGs on the GameCube in Japan that Nintendo asked Namco to release them there, so Monolith Soft and Tri Crescendo developed their first game with that in mind. Terrible mistake, as both games were commercial failures and barely sold. I think maybe if more companies had decided back then to develop and release JRPGs on the GameCube, the system would have been successful in the genre. I understand Nintendo struggled a lot against PlayStation consoles, as they just seemed much better to develop RPGs for. It worked for their portable systems like the DS or the 3DS, but not enough support was there, even from them on their home consoles. And that's the harsh truth of it, which meant both Baten Kaitos and some other good JRPGs on the GameCube and the Wii were definitely released on the wrong console. Number 1. Lost Odyssey. Mistwalker stayed away from the PlayStation. Square Enix was releasing their main Final Fantasy games over there, so the only way Mistwalker thought to really compete against them was to release their first RPGs for the Xbox 360. Not a very intelligent decision, to be honest. Back then it might have felt as the best course of action, if you remember what I said when I covered Infinite on Discovery. But it turned out it wasn't. Nothing could compete against the mighty PlayStation legacy on RPGs or the Nintendo portable systems. So obviously Mistwalker moved on to the DS, only to fail again. But that's another story. Lost Odyssey was released exclusively to the 360 to a commercial success, surprisingly, just like Blue Dragon had done before. But Dragon felt kinda okay on that console, like here's your RPG exclusive for it. But Lost Odyssey just didn't. And now that everything Microsoft is considered weak when it comes to JRPGs, it's disappointing to see this masterpiece is still exclusive to the 360. Yes, it sold well, but it obviously would have sold even more had it been released on the right system, like the PlayStation 3 for example. So then, it could have rightfully destroyed Square Enix's Final Fantasy XIII. Alright guys, that's it. Those were my 10 picks for today's video. The list of honorable mentions could go on. I'm looking at you, Sega. Okay, well, a lot of Sega JRPGs I'm pretty sure were released on the right console, but nobody knew the Sega Saturn, the Sega CD, or the Dreamcast will fail miserably outside of Japan. Anyway, hey, don't forget that my latest books are available on Amazon, links in the description below. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with your friends. See you next time!